Parents cut me off for 6 years because I started my own software company instead of getting a corporate job like my sister, but when she got fired they suddenly wanted to reconcile just so I could hire her. They went crazy when I said no. I'm writing this because I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some perspective. This situation has been eating at me for weeks now. I, 32M, have an older sister Claudia, 34F. Our parents always made it clear who their favorite was. Claudia could do no wrong. She got straight A's, went to law school, and landed a job at a prestigious firm right after graduation. She made partner 3 years ago and has been living the perfect life my parents always wanted for both of us. Growing up, every conversation at dinner revolved around Claudia's achievements. When she won the debate championship in high school, my parents threw her a party. When I made varsity basketball, they asked why I wasn't focusing more on my grades like Claudia. When she got into Harvard Law, they called everyone they knew. When I got accepted to state school for computer science, they asked if I was sure I wouldn't rather study business or pre-law. The pattern continued after college. Claudia bought her first house at 26 with help from our parents for the down payment. When I told them I wanted to start my own software development company, they asked when I was going to get serious about my career. Claudia got engaged to another lawyer from her firm, and my parents started planning their dream wedding. When I introduced them to my girlfriend Claudia, 29F, they spent the entire dinner asking her what she did for work and whether she planned to continue working after marriage. 6 years ago, I finally decided to take the plunge with my business. I had been working as a developer for 3 years and saved up enough money to support myself for about 8 months. I had already built a few apps that were gaining traction, and I knew I could make it work if I dedicated myself full time. The market for custom business software was growing, and I had several potential clients lined up. I made the mistake of telling my parents about my plan during Sunday dinner. I expected them to at least pretend to be supportive, even if they had concerns. Instead, my dad put down his fork and stared at me like I had just announced I was joining the circus. My mom actually laughed and asked if I was having some kind of midlife crisis at 26. They spent the next hour explaining why this was a terrible idea. My dad listed all the small business failure statistics he could remember. My mom kept bringing up how Claudia never would have made such a risky decision. They told me I was throwing away my education and my future. When I tried to explain my business plan, they cut me off and said I was being naive. The conversation ended with my dad giving me an ultimatum. I could keep my stable job and continue to be their son, or I could pursue this foolish dream and find myself a new family. He said they had worked too hard to raise successful children to watch one of them become a failure. My mom nodded along and added that they couldn't bear the embarrassment of having to explain to their friends why one of their children was unemployed and chasing fantasies. I told them I was disappointed but not surprised by their reaction. I said I was going to start my company with or without their support. That's when my dad told me not to bother coming back until I came to my senses. My mom said they were done enabling my unrealistic expectations. I packed up my things that night and moved in with Claudia. My parents didn't call or text for weeks. When I finally tried to reach out, they sent short responses telling me they would be happy to hear from me when I was ready to apologize and get back to building a real career. Claudia called me once during this time. She said she understood why our parents were concerned and suggested I might want to consider their advice. She reminded me how hard they had worked to give us opportunities and how disappointed they were in my choices. When I tried to explain my business plan to her, she cut me off and said she had to go. Starting the company was harder than I expected, but not for the reasons my parents thought. The technical side came naturally to me, and I had no trouble finding clients. The challenge was doing everything myself: sales, marketing, development, accounting, customer service. I worked 16-hour days for the first year and barely broke even. But slowly, things started to improve. I hired my first employee after 18 months. By year 3, I had a team of 5 developers and was turning a decent profit. Claudia stood by me through all of it, working extra hours at her job to help cover our expenses during the lean months. During this entire time, my parents maintained their silence. I heard updates about them through my Aunt Linda, 52F, who always made it clear she thought my parents were making a mistake. She told me they asked about me sometimes but never directly reached out. Through Linda, I learned that they knew about my business success but never acknowledged it. Last year, Claudia and I got married. We invited my parents, but they didn't respond to the invitation. Claudia sent a card with a generic message but didn't attend either. The wedding was small and perfect, with the people who actually cared about us. 3 months ago, everything changed. My parents called me out of nowhere and asked if they could take Claudia and me to dinner. I was suspicious but curious. Claudia encouraged me to go, thinking maybe they were ready to rebuild our relationship. The dinner was awkward from the start. They were unusually polite and kept complimenting Claudia and asking about my business. They had clearly done their research and knew exactly how well I was doing. My company now has 12 employees and clients across 3 states. We're not rich, but we're comfortable and growing steadily. About halfway through dinner, the real reason for the meeting became clear. My dad cleared his throat and said they had something important to discuss. That's when they told me about Claudia's situation. Apparently, Claudia's law firm had been struggling for the past year. Several major clients had left, and the partners were fighting about how to handle the financial difficulties. 2 weeks before our dinner, Claudia and 3 other partners had been forced out of the firm. She received a small severance package, but nothing close to what she was used to earning. My parents explained that Claudia was having trouble finding a new position at her level. The legal market was competitive, and most firms were cutting costs rather than hiring expensive partners. She had been interviewing for 2 months with no offers. Then came the request. They wanted me to hire Claudia as my company's legal counsel. They had researched my business enough to know that I was probably paying outside firms for legal work. They suggested I could save money by bringing that work in-house, and Claudia could handle all of my contracts, employment issues, and other legal needs. I told them I needed to think about it. The truth was, I knew immediately that it wouldn't work. My business didn't generate enough legal work to justify a full-time lawyer, especially one expecting partner-level compensation. More importantly, I couldn't imagine working closely with someone who had treated me with such contempt for years. I discussed it with Claudia that night. She pointed out that my parents hadn't apologized for anything they had said or done. They hadn't acknowledged that they were wrong about my business or asked how I had managed to succeed without their support. They were only interested in what I could do for Claudia now that they needed something from me. I called my parents 2 days later and told them I couldn't hire Claudia. I explained that my business wasn't large enough to support a full-time legal position and that I was happy with my current legal arrangements. I offered to introduce Claudia to some business contacts who might be able to help her find opportunities, but I made it clear that hiring her wasn't going to happen. My dad's response was immediate and explosive. He started yelling about how ungrateful I was and how family was supposed to help family. My mom got on the phone and accused me of being jealous of Claudia's success and enjoying watching her struggle. They said I owed them for all the years they had supported me and that this was my chance to pay them back. I reminded them that they had cut me off 6 years ago and hadn't supported anything I had done since then. I pointed out that they had never invested a single dollar in my business or offered any help during the difficult early years. My dad screamed that raising me was investment enough and that I owed them a return on that investment. The call ended with my mom telling me I was being petty and holding grudges. She said they had hoped success would make me more mature, but apparently I was still the same selfish person I had always been. My dad added that Claudia would never treat family the way I was treating them. I hung up and blocked their numbers. Claudia held me while I sat on our couch, staring at the wall. She said she was proud of me for standing up to them, but I could tell she was shaken by how vicious they had been. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, they have been texting my relatives with their version of the story. According to them, I'm a vindictive person who is using Claudia's temporary setback as an opportunity for revenge. They claim I'm jealous of her achievements and happy to see her fail. Most of my relatives see through this manipulation. My Aunt Linda has been forwarding me some of the messages, and they're pretty transparent about what really happened. But a few family members have reached out to ask if I might reconsider, suggesting that helping Claudia would be the right thing to do. I keep thinking about the 6 years I spent building this business without any support from my family. I remember the nights I stayed up until 3 a.m. writing code and answering client emails. I remember Claudia working overtime to help pay our rent when my income was inconsistent. I remember the stress and uncertainty and the constant worry about whether I was making a huge mistake. My parents weren't there for any of it. They made their choice when they decided their reputation was more important than their relationship with me. Claudia made her choice when she sided with them and dismissed my dreams as unrealistic. Now they want me to fix Claudia's problems with the same business they mocked and predicted would fail. They want me to use the success they never supported to bail out the child they always favored. I know I'm not obligated to hire Claudia. I know my parents burned their bridges 6 years ago. But part of me wonders if I'm being too harsh. Maybe this could be an opportunity to rebuild our family relationships. Maybe Claudia has learned something from this experience and would be different to work with now. But then I think about how they approached this whole situation. No apology. No acknowledgement of their mistakes. No recognition of what I accomplished despite their lack of support. Just demands and manipulation and accusations when I didn't immediately give them what they wanted. Am I wrong for refusing to help Claudia? Should family loyalty override the years of dismissal and rejection? I built this business to prove I could succeed on my own terms, but now I'm not sure what success is supposed to look like when it comes to family. Update 1: I thought this situation was over, but it's gotten much more complicated. I'm still processing everything that happened, so I wanted to share an update. After I blocked my parents' numbers, things were quiet for about a week. Claudia and I were starting to move on and focus on other things. My business was doing well, and we were talking about taking a vacation to celebrate our first wedding anniversary. Then Claudia called me directly. I almost didn't answer because I assumed she was calling to pressure me about the job, but something made me pick up. She sounded different, tired and less confident than usual. She started by saying she knew our parents had talked to me about her situation. She said she wanted me to know that she hadn't asked them to get involved and was embarrassed that they had put me in that position. She apologized for not reaching out to me directly when she lost her job and for letting our parents handle something that should have been between us. This surprised me because Claudia had never apologized to me for anything in our entire lives. She had always been the one who was right, and I was the one who needed to change or improve. But she sounded genuinely sorry, and I found myself listening instead of hanging up. She told me more about what happened at her firm. Apparently, the financial problems had been building for months, but the partners had been hiding the extent of the issues from each other. When everything came out, there was a lot of blame and finger-pointing. Claudia said she felt betrayed by people she had trusted and worked with for almost a decade. She also admitted that she was struggling more than our parents realized. She had been living on her savings for 2 months, and her mortgage payments were significant. She had received a few job offers, but they were all at much lower salaries than she was used to, and she wasn't sure if she should take them or hold out for something better. I told her about my conversation with our parents and how they had reacted when I refused to hire her. Claudia was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she said she was sorry for how they had treated me and sorry for not standing up for me 6 years ago when I started my business. She said she had been thinking a lot about our relationship and realized she had always just gone along with our parents' opinions instead of forming her own. She admitted that she had been jealous of my independence and my willingness to take risks, even though she had never expressed that before. We talked for almost 2 hours. It was the longest conversation Claudia and I had ever had without our parents present. By the end, I found myself genuinely liking my sister for the first time in years. She seemed like a real person instead of the perfect robot our parents had created. But then things took another turn. The next day, my Aunt Linda called with disturbing news. She said my parents had been telling people that Claudia and I were now working together and that I had agreed to hire her. They were apparently spreading this story to save face after all the drama they had created with their texting campaign. When I called Claudia to ask her about this, she had no idea what I was talking about. She said our parents hadn't contacted her since she lost her job, and she certainly hadn't told them we were working together. She was as confused and annoyed as I was. That weekend, my cousin Jake, 28M, called to congratulate me on hiring Claudia. When I told him that wasn't true, he seemed genuinely surprised. He said my parents had called his mom and told her the whole family was back together and that I had come to my senses about helping Claudia. Claudia and I decided to confront our parents together. We went to their house on Sunday afternoon without calling first. My dad answered the door and looked shocked to see us both standing there. He immediately started talking about how happy he was that we had worked everything out. I cut him off and asked why he was telling people Claudia and I were working together when that wasn't true. My mom appeared behind him and said they had just assumed we would figure things out once we talked to each other directly. She said they were trying to smooth things over with the family after all the controversy. Claudia spoke up and told them they had no right to lie about her employment situation or to involve other family members in their drama. She said she was embarrassed that they were spreading false information and making her look desperate. My parents tried to defend themselves by saying they were just trying to help and that they knew Claudia and I would eventually do the right thing. My dad said families sometimes need a little push to remember what's important. That's when Claudia really surprised me. She told our parents that their behavior over the past 6 years had been shameful and that they owed me a serious apology. She said they had been wrong about my business, wrong about my character, and wrong to cut me off when I needed their support. My mom tried to interrupt, but Claudia kept talking. She said she was ashamed of how she had treated me and that our parents had taught her to prioritize their approval over her relationship with her brother. She said she was done letting them control her decisions and her relationships. My dad got defensive and started listing all the things they had done for us over the years. He said they had sacrificed for our education and our opportunities, and they deserved better treatment from both of us. My mom added that they had always done what they thought was best for us, even when we couldn't see it at the time. Claudia responded by saying that good parents don't abandon their children for making choices they disagree with. She said they had missed 6 years of my life and my success because they were too proud to admit they were wrong. She told them they were losing both of their children because they couldn't accept that we were adults capable of making our own decisions. The conversation got heated quickly. My parents accused Claudia of being ungrateful and said I had turned her against them. They said our family had been fine until I started causing problems with my selfish decisions. My mom started crying and said she couldn't believe both of her children were attacking her. Claudia stood up and said she was done with the conversation. She told our parents that she wouldn't be accepting any more help from them and that she would handle her job situation on her own. She said they had lost the right to be involved in her life when they chose manipulation over honesty. As we walked to our cars, Claudia apologized again for not standing up for me sooner. She said she finally understood what I had been dealing with for years and that she was proud of me for building a successful business despite their lack of support. But the situation with our parents wasn't over. The next day, they started a new round of calls to relatives, this time claiming that Claudia and I had ganged up on them and that I had turned their daughter against them. They said they were the victims of their ungrateful children who had forgotten everything they had done for us. Most of our relatives aren't buying this version of events. My Aunt Linda has been particularly supportive, reminding people about how our parents treated me 6 years ago and pointing out the inconsistencies in their stories. But the constant drama is exhausting, and I'm tired of being the center of family gossip. Claudia has been dealing with her own fallout. Our parents called her workplace references and told them she was going through family problems that might affect her judgment. Fortunately, most of her references knew her well enough to disregard these calls, but it was still a violation of her privacy and her professional reputation. She's also had to deal with financial pressure. Her savings are running lower, and she's starting to consider taking one of the lower-paying job offers she received. She's frustrated that our parents' drama is adding stress to an already difficult situation. Meanwhile, my business continues to do well. I've been getting calls from relatives asking about job opportunities, apparently because our parents have been telling people that I'm hiring family members. I've had to explain the situation multiple times and clarify that I'm not running an employment agency for distant cousins. Claudia has been incredibly supportive through all of this. She says she's proud of how I handled the confrontation with my parents and how I've been supporting Claudia without letting our parents manipulate the situation. But I can tell the constant family drama is wearing on her too. The strangest part of all this is how much my relationship with Claudia has changed. We've been talking regularly for the first time in years, and I'm discovering that we actually have a lot in common when our parents aren't influencing our interactions. She's been asking me for advice about her job search, and I've been helping her think through her options. But I'm also aware that our newfound closeness might be temporary. Claudia is used to being the favored child, and I'm not sure how she'll react when she finds stable employment and doesn't need family support anymore. I want to believe she's genuinely changed, but 6 years of family patterns don't disappear overnight. Our parents are still spreading their version of events to anyone who will listen. They've started posting vague messages on social media about being abandoned by ungrateful children and how modern families don't understand loyalty and sacrifice. Several relatives have told them to stop airing family business online, but they seem determined to paint themselves as the victims. I'm not sure where this situation is heading. Claudia and I are building a better relationship, but our parents seem committed to their narrative that we're both selfish and ungrateful. They've made it clear that they expect apologies and compliance, not the independence we're both asserting. The whole experience has made me realize how much our parents controlled our family dynamics and how little Claudia and I actually knew each other outside of their influence. It's been good to connect with her, but it's also sad to think about all the years we missed because we were too busy competing for parental approval. Update 2: This saga has taken another turn that I didn't see coming. I'm writing this update because the situation has basically exploded and I want to document what actually happened before my parents spin it into something else entirely. Claudia found a job 3 weeks ago. It's not at the same level as her partnership, but it's a solid position at a mid-sized firm with room for growth. The salary is about 60% of what she was making before, but it's enough to cover her expenses and start rebuilding her savings. I was genuinely happy for her when she called to tell me the news. But apparently our parents weren't satisfied with this development. I found out through my Aunt Linda that they had been telling people Claudia was still struggling and that I was still refusing to help family in need. They were using her job search as evidence of my selfishness, even after she found employment. What I didn't know was that they had also been contacting Claudia's new employer. Claudia discovered this when her new boss mentioned that her parents had called to express concerns about her financial stability and family stress affecting her work performance. Her boss was professional about it, but Claudia was mortified that our parents were interfering with her fresh start. That's when Claudia decided she had enough. She called our parents and told them to stop contacting her employer and to stop using her situation to justify their attacks on me. She said their behavior was damaging her professional reputation and that she was considering a restraining order if they didn't back off. Our parents' response was predictable. They accused Claudia of being brainwashed by me and said she was forgetting everything they had done for her over the years. They claimed they were only trying to help her succeed and that her new job was beneath her capabilities. They said I had filled her head with lies about their motives. Claudia recorded this conversation, which turned out to be a smart decision. She played parts of it for me later, and it was even worse than I expected. Our dad called her new job a step backward and said she was settling for less because she was too proud to accept help from family. Our mom said Claudia was making a mistake by listening to me instead of the people who had always supported her success. But the real shock came when our parents revealed something they had been hiding. During their rant about Claudia's ingratitude, our dad let slip that they had been calling my business clients for months, trying to get information about my financial situation and warning them about potential problems with my company. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Claudia asked them to repeat what they had said, and our dad realized his mistake. He tried to backtrack and claim he was just networking to help my business, but our mom contradicted him by saying they needed to know how successful I really was before they could plan their approach. Claudia confronted them directly about sabotaging my business relationships. Our parents defended their actions by saying they were trying to protect people from making bad deals with someone who had a history of poor judgment. They said they were being responsible by sharing their concerns about my business practices and my treatment of family. That's when I realized they had been actively working against my success for months, possibly longer. I started thinking about some client conversations that had seemed odd and some deals that had fallen through unexpectedly. I had assumed it was normal business fluctuation, but now I wondered if my parents had been poisoning those relationships. I spent the next few days reaching out to current and former clients to ask if anyone had contacted them about my business. What I discovered was worse than I had imagined. My parents had called at least a dozen companies over the past year, identifying themselves as my family and expressing concerns about my reliability and financial stability. Most of my clients had ignored these calls or assumed they were from competitors trying to damage my reputation. But a few had been influenced by the conversations. One potential client told me they had decided not to work with my company because my own family seemed to have concerns about my business practices. I was furious, but I was also strategic about how to handle it. Instead of confronting my parents directly, I contacted a lawyer to discuss my options. It turns out that what they were doing could be considered interference with business relations, especially since they had no legitimate business purpose for contacting my clients. My lawyer sent a cease and desist letter to my parents, demanding that they stop contacting my business associates and threatening legal action if they continued their interference. The letter laid out exactly what they had been doing and made it clear that their behavior was legally problematic. My parents' response was to call Claudia and scream at her for giving me the information I needed to take legal action against them. They accused her of betraying family and said she was as ungrateful as I was. They threatened to cut her off completely if she didn't convince me to drop the legal threat. Claudia's response surprised even me. She told our parents that she was done being manipulated and controlled by them. She said their behavior toward both of us had been unacceptable for years, and she wasn't going to enable it anymore. She told them that if they continued to interfere with our lives and careers, she would testify against them in any legal proceedings. This led to the biggest fight our family has ever had. Our parents showed up at Claudia's apartment unannounced and demanded that she choose between them and me. They said she couldn't have a relationship with both of us and that she needed to decide who was more important to her. Claudia called me while they were there, and I could hear our parents yelling in the background. She asked me to come over for support, which I did. When I arrived, I found our parents in Claudia's living room, going through a list of everything they had ever done for her and demanding that she acknowledge their sacrifices. I had never seen our parents this out of control. Our dad was pacing around the room, waving his arms and talking about how ungrateful children were destroying families. Our mom was crying and saying she didn't understand how she had raised two children who hated her so much. Claudia stood in the middle of it all and told them they needed to leave her apartment. She said their behavior was proving exactly why we had both pulled away from them. She pointed out that loving parents don't sabotage their children's careers or try to control their adult relationships. Our parents refused to leave until Claudia agreed to cut contact with me and support their version of events with the rest of the family. They said she had to choose between her brother who had turned her against them and her parents who had always been there for her. That's when Claudia said something that ended the relationship permanently. She told our parents that they had never been there for either of us in any meaningful way. She said they had been there for the children they wanted us to be, not the people we actually were. She said their love was conditional on our compliance, and that wasn't real love at all. Our dad lost it completely. He started yelling that Claudia was ungrateful and selfish and that she would regret choosing me over the people who had given her everything. Our mom said they were done with both of us and that we deserved each other since we were both failures as children. Claudia called the police. Our parents left before the officers arrived, but Claudia filed a report about the harassment and trespassing. The officers took her statement and advised her to document any future contact from our parents. The next day, our parents posted a long message on social media about being abandoned by their ungrateful children who had been turned against them by outside influences. They claimed they had always been loving and supportive parents who were being punished for trying to help their children succeed. The response from our extended family was swift and brutal. Aunt Linda commented with a detailed account of how our parents had treated me 6 years ago. Several cousins added their own stories about our parents' controlling behavior and conditional love. Uncle Robert pointed out that good parents don't sabotage their children's businesses or careers. Within hours, our parents posted dozens of comments from family members calling them out for their manipulation and lies. Several relatives shared their own experiences with our parents' interference in their lives and their tendency to blame others for problems they created. Our parents deleted the post and their entire social media accounts. According to Aunt Linda, they've been calling relatives trying to get people to stop commenting on their behavior, but most of the family is fed up with their drama and manipulation. Claudia and I have both blocked our parents on all platforms and changed our phone numbers. My lawyer has advised them that any further contact with us or interference with our businesses will result in immediate legal action. So far, they seem to be complying with the cease and desist order. My business is doing fine despite their interference. Most of my clients weren't influenced by our parents' calls, and the ones who have gotten the full story and seem comfortable continuing our relationships. If anything, the situation has made me more careful about protecting my business from outside interference. Claudia is settling into her new job and seems much happier than she's been in years. We've been meeting for coffee every few weeks and building the adult-sibling relationship we never had. She's been incredibly supportive throughout this whole mess, and I'm grateful to have her in my corner. The strangest part of all this is how quiet our lives have become without our parents' constant drama and manipulation. Claudia and I are planning that vacation we talked about, and Claudia is thinking about buying a smaller house that better fits her new budget. We're all moving forward with our lives instead of constantly dealing with family crisis and conflict. I don't expect our parents to change or apologize. They've made it clear that they see themselves as the victims in this situation and that Claudia and I are the ungrateful children who have wronged them. But that's their choice to make, and I'm done trying to manage their emotions or their relationships with other people. The business I built 6 years ago is thriving. The sister I thought I had lost is back in my life. The parents who tried to control and sabotage us are no longer our problem. Sometimes the family you end up with is smaller than the one you started with, but it's also healthier and more honest. Claudia and I are both doing well, and that success has nothing to do with our parents' approval or support. We built our own lives despite their interference, not because of their help. And now we're free to continue building those lives without their manipulation and drama.